Hi, I am Kimberly Danielle, and I am co-founder and project director for Do Get X, and I am here with my colleague.
And I'm Stephen Lewis, and I am the creator and a co-founder of Do Good X. And I'm here with my colleague Kimberly. We're here to talk about one of our projects, Do Good X, and Kimberly. So, what do we want to talk about today?
So before I get into that, I just want to let you know, for you all who aren't familiar with Do Get X, I want to let you know who Do Get X is, or what Do Get X is. Do Get X is a 10-week accelerator program. It's virtual for early stage social entrepreneurs who want to make a positive impact on people and the environment and communities through their business venture. And so for us, over the 10 weeks, we're taking people's solid business idea to a minimum viable solution that they can test out and launch and hopefully scale for their business after the 10 weeks. So we are having these virtual conversations. You'll see maybe a series come up in the future after this one, focusing on different topics that we're passionate about, and it's related to our work at Do Get X. So social entrepreneurship, faith-rooted entrepreneurship, why our work is important for underrepresented entrepreneurs. So just different aspects of our work that we enjoy talking about and that need to be talked about right now, especially in the times that we're living in. And so I'm just going to dive right in today and start with asking Stephen a question. So for us at Duke X, we focus on faith-rooted entrepreneurs. Why faith-rooted entrepreneurs? What's important about faith-rooted entrepreneurship in particular?
Yeah, well, faith is, I think, an important part of an individual, however they understand themselves. And for us, when we think about faith, we're primarily talking about those who are Christian leaders. And when we think about entrepreneurship, that's about positively helping people that have always been a part of Christianity, whether it's named entrepreneurship or not. I mean, think about it. When you look at the beginning of hospitals and educational institutions, when you look at United Way, Red Cross, Habitat for Humanity, all of these things were founded by Christian founders. And so when we talk about faith, what we're really getting at is that for us, it is a superpower. Many accelerators doing great work out there, but oftentimes when we see that people who are interested in social entrepreneurship, they're doing it out of some passion, some sense of call, about why they feel compelled and gifted to actually address the needs of a community or a group of people. And we know that in the entrepreneurial endeavor, uh, that too often we see and hear no, and we see dream slayers and naysayers. And so faith is a way to kind of bolster our resiliency, that in the face of no's, we continue to press on. And eventually those no's will be transformed into yeses. I think the other thing, what I would say, is that faith explicitly welcomes and affirms, this idea of a way of kind of talking about the inspiration for your passion. So it's a way to talk about what inspires us and compels us to actually get involved. The other thing I would say is a way to talk about your commitment to a group of people, your fidelity to actually address a particular need within a particular community. And then I would also say that it is what grounds us in the midst of so much uncertainty and not knowing, that we continue to stay focused, to stay steady, and to move forward in what it is that we're called to do. And then finally, what I would say is that faith, it really is a kind of realization that there's something greater than us, and that we connect to a deeper knowing, that we are co-conspiring on the behalf of the good, in communion with God and the people of God, in those communities that are looking for healing, wherever they are. So that's what I would say that faith is. In the end, it is a superpower.
Well, I think you've summed it right on up. I don't have anything to add to that, other than just to further emphasize. When you were talking about resiliency, I'm thinking about what our elders say, making a way out of no way, and so I apply that to what faith can offer to entrepreneurs. Like you said, in the face of no's and setbacks and challenges that we know entrepreneurs will face, especially walking into a field where the statistic is 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs fail. And so, given that, faith can really propel somebody to make it happen even in the face of those setbacks. So I agree with all that you've named, and I would further emphasize that resiliency, and movement forward in the face of the challenges that they can have.
Absolutely. So when we talk about uh, faith rooted entrepreneurs, does it include different religious traditions? How would you respond to that? Because we've been using this language of faith and faith rootedness. So who are we talking about when we say that?
For Do Good X in particular, we're talking about the Christian faith. Now, we also understand, even within the Christian faith, there are multiple expressions of what that looks like. So we're not specific about what that looks like. People can come from different perspectives, people can come from different denominations. As long as people are committed to and rooted in principles such as generosity and purpose and passion and justice, and courage. If somebody is operating out of those particular principles, which we tie into the Christian faith, though they may be applicable to other faiths as well, but for us, it's rooted in Christian faith. As long as somebody is committed to those, what their expression of Christianity looks like for them, that's that's fine. We're open to that. And that's a benefit of being a part of the accelerator too, is that you come into a space where people come from different diverse perspectives, and may be able to further enhance your experience, because you are experiencing a different level of diversity, than you may have experienced before.
That's
Is there
good.
anything
Well,
that you would say to that?
well, yeah. I mean, I guess what I would just say is that um, these particular principles, while we found them rooted within, a Christian framework, we know they're not limited. Justice is not limited to Christianity. But for us, I would say that these are foundational principles that guide, our efforts and the work of entrepreneurs who want to make a positive impact on people, community, and the environment in just and faithful ways. And so, um, of all the kind of resources out there, we recognize that they're not infinite resources. So our resources are limited to focus on this particular group, and it really is in service to actually to create a better world, to create better communities, to address kind of tough, entrenched issues within those particular communities, and realizing that faith bolsters people's ability and resiliency to actually attend to and come up with viable solutions to the problems that they face within their respective communities.
Right. Yeah, that's good. So, shifting a little bit, we talk about our particular audience, people that we work with. We cast them as underrepresented entrepreneurs, which I know people have had a lot of questions about what that means, which I'll just name what that means before I get into further into the question that I'm going to ask you, Stephen. So,
They know what that means.
I think people know what that means, but I'm gonna just be honest. People have asked me, what does that mean? So I'll be explicit in naming for Do Good X. What we mean by underrepresented entrepreneurs are women and people of color in particular. Now, that doesn't mean that we are exclusively working with women and people of color, and no one else can apply and be involved in the program. But that what that does mean is that the majority of who makes up the accelerator program will be women and people of color, for the reasons that I'm assuming Stephen will say to my question that I'm about to ask, which is why people of color in particular? Let's start there before we moved it into women. Why does Do Get X focus on people of color, particularly in this entrepreneurial field?
And I think in large ways, my answer to that is that we want to diversify the field, the industry, the ecosystem of entrepreneurship in general and social entrepreneurship in particular, which currently is a very white space, which is to say that, that it's the space that has historically and tends to resource majority white spaces, leaders, particularly men. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we know that the complexity of issues that we face within our communities around the world need to be able to harness the best wisdom and insight that only can come from a diverse ecosystem and space for diverse leaders who are working on kind of entrenched problems within the community. And so our effort is really about how do we help diversify the community and to demonstrate that there is a pipeline. There is even a niche ecosystem of talented, gifted, smart, dedicated women and people of color that are worthy of people's investment, their support, and the resources that enable them to be successful in the work that they're trying to do for their community. So, in many ways, we're focusing on that group because we believe that diversity is a value. Diversity is a bonus. Diversity adds to our ability to even come up with better projects. And at this moment, there's just not enough diversity within the space that is reflective of the rich, diverse world in which we live in the communities that we find ourselves across not only this country, but across the world. And so our effort is alongside many other allies who are trying to diversify this space, resource a broader diversity of people who want to and who have always been engaged in the entrepreneurial spirit and endeavor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to add that when you're looking at the traditional amount of wealth that white individuals have access to,
Yeah.
in comparison to, I'll say, for instance, Black individuals, not saying all white families, but on average it's almost 10 times more than Black households. And so just looking at that statistic in and of itself, to me, communicates that people in our community, the Black community, are trying to make ends meet. They may not necessarily have that disposable income to even test out an entrepreneurial venture, though they may have some ideas. Some are just and some are just doing it out of survival as well. So making the ends meet. So there is already a step up that the white community in particular has access to. Again, not all, but the majority, according to statistics, have access to, that other communities just have not. In addition, they don't have, we haven't had access to the resources to kind of prepare for this business mindset, to be able to have that business acumen, other than if we happen to just come from families who were entrepreneurs, like myself. And so I think, and to just kind of underscore some of what you named, just throwing a data point out there just makes this work worthwhile for me. And I really enjoy it, being able to provide this kind of business development skills and experience in a community for people of color who may not have had access otherwise.
Yeah, I'm thinking particularly when you think about data statistic, I'm thinking about Catherine Finney, who created Digital Undivided, and
Mm-hmm.
she's been keeping up with a lot of this research data. And one of the things she, was kind of named is this idea that when you look comparatively, the amount of capital that white men are able to raise for failed businesses compared to sisters who are trying to get their first initial enterprise off the ground, you're talking about $1.2 million that funneled to enterprises started by, white men that fail, to about 36,000 for, women of color who are trying to get their business off the ground. I mean, the disparity
Yeah.
in terms of who gets to do entrepreneurship, who has who has an entrepreneurial idea that is worthy of investment, the disparity of that is alarming. And so part of the question, when we think about, on average, it takes somewhere between $25 to $50,000 to kind of get your business to a stage where you're going to launch and maybe be open to other investors. A lot of folks got to bootstrap it, and it's friends and family. And so when you look at this type of 10-to-1 ratio in terms of wealth and disposable income, in terms of the opportunity to kind of build a business, it really does put communities of color and even women at a disadvantage compared to their white male counterparts. And so part of what we want to do is to close that gap and to help that gap, not just financially, but also the resource gap in terms of the making the knowledge and the skill sets more accessible to a wider audience of folks who are already doing this in very kinds of innovative ways in their own context, to give them even more resources to be more effective in what it is they're trying to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm going to say this, and then we can pivot to the next question. But I think about, when somebody leaves out of our program, which is early stage, and they get to the point where they're, really approaching and wanting to get some investors. And like you said, you have to have at least $25,000, $30,000. And for some people, it's up to $100,000 to prove that you have a viable idea for people to invest in it. I'm thinking to myself, friends and family, I'm contacting my friends and family for $100,000. No. No, I would not get close to that. So, and I know that's not just my story. That's a lot of people's story in communities of color. Right. So yes.
But let me say this too. I mean, I think, too often the entrepreneurial community funds and invests in what only a few elite people care about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You and I know that our communities are diverse and broad and rich, and there are multiple needs. There are multiple solutions. There are multiple business enterprises that need to be invested in. And it's no longer excuse in 21st century to say, I don't know about these opportunities. I didn't know about these kinds of leaders. I didn't know that I could pay it forward in to help people who haven't had what I had, that I have a responsibility to pay it forward and to share some of what I know and what I've been able to do to the next generation, to people of color, to women who have been always trying to make a way out of nowhere to actually start their businesses. So, in many ways, that's why we're kind of doing what we're trying to do, and hopefully to kind of make the entrepreneurial ecosystem more diverse and rich and reflective of the broader world in which we live.
Mm-hmm. I think you've kind of pivoted. No, you haven't pivoted, but you've mentioned part of what I wanted to talk about next, which is why women in particular. So we talk about people of color being involved in You Get X, but also women more in general, because that disparity does still exist for women. I think we're starting to see a lot of opportunities emerge more for people of color and for women in particular, but that gap is still there. And so, just want to talk a little bit about why do we also focus on women, narrowing our focus particularly on that aspect.
To me, I think, it's pretty obvious, which is when, a little that I know about your story, when I think about my own story, women have always been inventive and creative and had ingenuity to create new things. And I think historically we've always, thought about, business and whatever is outside the home is the domain of men. And, that's just not the case. And, when we think about some of some of the best entrepreneurs, at least within our community, there are many names that we could actually point to and see, Madam C.J. Walker and others who have actually done tremendous jobs in terms of what they've tried to do on behalf of and in service to the community. And so, I think this is another dimension of how we enrich the community and recognizing that women bring so many gifts, so many insights, so many opportunities in their type of tenacity to actually make things happen. When you think about, some of the great movements within our country, it's because of women. You think of our households, it's because of women, the ways in which they've organized and mobilized, they're able to get people involved, they're able to inspire folks and actually, get them to a place where they actually do something. In our country, it's because of women. In the 21st century, there's no reason why we should not be investing and supporting and helping their dreams, their visions for good ventures who want to do good in the world to actually to be launched and be successful. And so we work with them because we recognize, I think, the rich potential that they bring to the entrepreneurial endeavor. And to not do so would be a deficit of rich resources that the community overlooks too often. And it's something that, we're trying to, again, close a gap on.
Absolutely.
What would you say?
I feel like you just gave a passionate speech that I completely agree with. And I appreciate you as an ally for women who are really, working toward making an idea, a vision really happen and grow into a full-blown business. I think in particular, when you're looking at a large majority of the businesses that exist with white males in particular, in comparison to women are half as likely to employ anybody else other than themselves. So while some women may want that, and that may be their approach, when you're talking about consultancy or something like that, that's not the vision for all women. It just winds up being that way because they don't have business development skills, and which then has implications for the revenue that they generate, which then has implications for who they can afford or not afford to hire, which then has implications for the products and services that they may be able to provide or not provide. And so being able to provide access to not just business development skills, but also mentors who can help to guide and help to provide expertise and also help to hear and see women and hear their stories, what they're passionate about, and how they can come alongside them to make these things happen is so important and is a part of the community that we create for women in our program. And so anybody who comes into Do Good X, put in a nice little bow wrapped on this conversation, anybody who comes into this community who applies and attends and participates virtually, of course, come in knowing that you are a part of a rich community of people who come from diverse perspectives, who come from different communities, maybe different communities from your own, which may be able to give you feedback, encouragement, access to their networks, in ways that you may not have had before to further enhance your experience as an entrepreneur, to further enhance your business as you develop it out. And so I'm excited about our program this year, which will happen in the fall. This has been a great conversation as a kind of a starting point for conversations we may have in the future. And is there anything that you want to say to close this out, Stephen?
I would just say, do not put off tomorrow what you can do today. You don't need to wait until you're 40 or 50 or when you've amassed, a bunch of income in order to start a business. This is an invitation to you to invest in yourself, to gamble, and to bet on yourself. And if you do that, we'll walk alongside you and help you take your ideas to the next level to create your minimum viable solution in hopes of creating a venture that actually will make a difference in the world.
Thank you all for watching and tuning in, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future.